employees to being a co-founder of HR Wellbeing Week, and now on a mission to help others achieve emotional wellness. Ben will help you regain confidence in your life, career, so you can reach your ultimate potential. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to one of our members of our committee, Ben Edom.
Thank you so much. I got morning throat going on, so sorry. But thank you so much for having me here. And it's nice to just see the list and say, wow, I'm getting to know more and more people on this list. That's always fun. So let me see if I can share the screen here. It should just go, here we go. Ready for the magic? There we go. Oh, perfect. So, Julie, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can just see the suffering in silence? Yes, okay, perfect. Since you can't see my notes, right? Okay, good. I'm the only one seeing my notes. That's good. All right. So yes,
Ben, we can see your notes.
you can see my notes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
I can see your notes.
Well then. I mean, it's not bad. There's no secrets there, right? But
There you go.
how about
Just read
this?
ahead, yeah.
Hopefully, right?
Is this better?
Yeah.
That's
All
better.
right. Thank you. So, title
You
of
can't see your notes.
that's true. This is why we practice. So, title of today is Suffering in Silence. Now, sometimes we hear this and we say, well, that doesn't apply to me, or I don't know anybody like this. So when we talk mental health, it's kind of like, okay, that's fun. But for today, I want you to think, how does this apply to me? Or who do I know that this might apply to? Okay. So really think about how specific it can be for either you, somebody you know, or the friend, right? That's really us. I know how that works. So there we go. So today we're gonna have a mental health conversation and learn tools and strategies for taking care of you so you can fully show up for others. Again, thinking of you or somebody you know who this might apply to. Let me move my pictures here. All right. Will they see the Julie? Hey, thanks for being my Zoom partner here. Will you let me know if my pictures are covering the slideshow? Normally it doesn't.
It's just doing that because we're mirroring it.
This is what they're seeing.
Okay, perfect. Thank
You
you.
can move that too, I think.
Okay, this is good. So sorry for everybody here. You can see my pictures, but. So confirming that you or this person you're thinking about, right? This is the last time I'm going to establish that because now you know who you're thinking of. But you are in the right place if you are a driven high achiever. So if you're used to accomplishing lots and your personality is one that just makes it so that you like getting things done and you have a history of doing so, right? It explains to why you're in the position you're in, that you're a leader. Because you can get things done and you care about getting things done. That's why you're a driven high achiever. You're also familiar with success. You have a history of, hey, I probably got good grades in school. I probably finished my degree. I probably accomplished things. And that explains who I am. Your desire is to make more of your life. Because you're a high achiever and because you've achieved a lot of success, you are desirous to continue to do so. All right? You're not one of those people that says, hey, I'm done. Let me just sit back and relax the rest of my days. You're also in the right place if you have felt undervalued. You know you're a high achiever, and yet the people around you don't see that. They don't see all the successes that you've brought to the table, to their company, to the people that you work with, or your loved ones even. They don't see the value that you bring, and that hurts. And you feel overlooked. You might have been at your position for who knows how many years, you have some seniority, you have a history of building the company and bringing great things, and yet you see your coworkers getting that raise or that promotion, or the time in those meetings, and you feel overlooked. And again, that hurts. And so you feel lonely, frustrated, scared, or even apathetic, which simply means I'm tired of this hurting, so it's easier to not care. It's easier to stop feeling. Then you're in the right place if you have felt you're the only one that feels the way that you do. Nobody else understands what I feel, right? Nobody could understand what I'm going through or the pain that I'm experiencing. Nobody understands. And you find yourself judging how you feel. You say, well, I shouldn't feel this way because I'm a leader. You know, people look up to me. I shouldn't feel pain. Are you kidding me? Or I shouldn't suffer because my entire life people have seen me as the example, the people that, or the person that people look up to. So I shouldn't feel this way. And deep down, secretly, you hate how you feel. And you turn to your favorite coping mechanism to feel better. And you decide for yourself what that coping mechanism is. There's lots of different ways of phrasing this. It's the drug of choice, right? Social media. It can be binge watching. It can be food. It can be shopping. It can be spending money. It can be the drugs, the alcohol, the pornography, those kinds of things. It's whatever your coping mechanism is that you turn to avoid actually feeling. Because we don't like how we feel. Because of all the things going on in our lives. And so we turn to coping mechanisms. We may survive the week at work, and then the weekend is spent just trying to recuperate so that you can go back Monday and try to do it again. If you think of those times, then you can discover what your coping mechanism is and start to decide, is this really helping, or is this just dampening or numbing the pain? So, this is for you if you actually want to feel valued. Okay? We might have felt, or we do feel undervalued. And if you actually want to feel valued, then this presentation is for you. If you want to enjoy work and life again, you know that if you feel this pain, that it affects your work and life, right? You spend so much time at work and we get it, and sometimes it sucks, sometimes there's pain, sometimes you just feel everything that we mentioned. But we don't often speak of how it also translates to life, where you go back to your family and you still feel the same way, and how it affects your family, and how it affects your relationships. And then those start to deteriorate. And then work and family, and none of those are meeting your needs because of how you're feeling, and then it gets worse. So you actually want to enjoy work and life again, have those relationships. You want to change your habits. You start to realize that your coping mechanisms are not working, okay? Or you realize how detrimental they can be if you continue to use them. And ultimately, you want to have better relationships. You're tired of being lonely. You're tired of hurting and nobody understands. It seems like nobody cares. And you feel like this will last forever because nobody understands. But you do want to have better relationships. So these things will happen. You'll learn about these things in the presentation today. So it doesn't matter where you are now. If you are currently or have recently felt frustrated with your situation or sad, if you're anxious about the future, man, how long is this going to last? I don't know how to get out of it. There's no one who can help me. I have no idea where solutions are. Or whether you feel depressed. You know, I've tried. There's no use. Then you just get in the depth of depression, where again, you feel like nobody understands. And you start to become apathetic because it's easier that way. Easier not to care. Easier just to turn it off. So what we're going to talk about today is the power of connection, how to master your thoughts, and how to heal your emotions. And as part of this, you're going to hear my story. And this isn't meant to make it about me, but I've learned that as I share my story, it gives others permission to share theirs. And when you hear my details, although our details may not be exactly the same, you will think of yours, or the person that you're thinking about, right, and say, wow, I have felt that way. Somebody understands, and now I can do something about it. And so my story is that I got my bachelor's degree at Weber State. I continued to get my master's degree in human resources at Utah State. I got my SHRM Senior Certified Professional certificate, so that was cool. All this was happening while I was growing in my HR career. I started as an HR intern at this company, and I finished my bachelor's degree, got my master's degree, became certified. And so my education is growing, my confidence is growing, because it's like, wow, I love HR and I love what I can bring to the table. This is cool. And I'm working with a growing company that I can start implement these things, and I don't have to, fight the bureaucracy because we're new enough to not deal with that. So, and I started as the intern, like I mentioned, and I ended up running the department as we grew this company to become international. So that's cool. I mean, how many people in their 20s can say they've been an executive and turned the company international? That's cool. As part of that job, I got to travel the world and open these new locations and train people and see places. And it was fun because during my time of life, when I was single, I'd go with my group of friends and they'd be like, well, how was your week? Well, I was here this week and I went to see this, that week, and I'm in charge of this, all sorts of cool things that I could have said, right? And I was blessed to get a house, get a car. And so life was going pretty well. In fact, many people described me and they said, Ben, seems like you have a picture perfect life. I was like, well, thank you. But I didn't feel that way. And I was suffering in silence. And I was like, how is that possible? It seems like you have everything you could want in life. Traveling the world, great job, great title, education, you've accomplished lots. You have a lot of good things going for you. So how in the world could you be suffering in silence, Mr. Picture Perfect? I felt undervalued. How does that work? I had traveled the world and I had a lot of good experiences, but then things changed. I stopped traveling the world. I heard things like, Ben, we have nothing against you. We just hate HR. Oh.
That happens.
What am I supposed to do with that? Right? Or one day, I start to not get invited to certain meetings when I've been one of the original employees, right? And I've been close and I've helped grow the company. It's like, what is going on? So many things that were unexplained. I would get my master's degree and I'd become senior certified professional, but they didn't care because they don't care about HR, and they didn't understand either. So when I bring these ideas, it's just HR, just HR. And so I'd feel undervalued. And a lot of my ideas, I'd come so passionately, knowing the difference that it can make for this company to meet the business goals. Nobody cared. And I was lonely. And this is more than just at work, okay? Because I felt like I couldn't relate to my boss. He didn't care. My coworkers didn't understand HR and they were family and friends with the boss, so whatever. But this applied to family too. So in my time of life, my siblings were getting married. I was still not married. And so I started to think, oh no, what's wrong with me? What's happening to me? Why isn't this working, right? And then my friends, they were not executives in their 20s. And so to relate, how's your call center job? Nothing against them, right? I'm just trying to share my story, what was going on in my mind. Not to say I was better, just to say I couldn't find a way to relate. So I was lonely with friends, family, work. I had nowhere to turn where I could feel understood. Of course, I was anxious. I was like, oh my goodness, this is not where I plan to be. And I don't know where to go. I tried every year for 7 years to leave that job. Didn't work. I tried applying. Again, people didn't understand. Well, you're in your 20s. How do you have this executive experience? Have you fluffed up your resume or thoughts like that, right? I did not know it at the time, but I experienced depression. Because, hey, I can survive at work and then I go home and what's there for me? Coping mechanisms. And I couldn't tell anybody. So then it was just inside my head, not going anywhere. And for me, I did turn apathetic. I would go to the family parties. I would still be social, okay? I'd go to my networking meetings. I was a leader. I was seen everywhere. And yet, I turned apathetic. I'd stay very superficial with my relationships. I would try not to care. And at best, I would be angry. At best. So I know what it's like to wake up in the morning and dread facing the day. I know what it's like to think it's easier to just not care. And I know what it's like to hate myself for how I feel and for my actions. All this from a picture perfect person, suffering in silence. Good news is, I didn't stay that way. So one of my coping mechanisms throughout all of this loneliness and all these emotions that I explained, I actually started to turn to pornography. Because that was the only thing that my brain thought would make me feel better. That's what coping mechanisms do. Your brain thinks it makes you feel better, and that's why we turn to it. Even if it's destructive, even if it does no good, even if it makes you feel worse afterwards. Your brain said, well, it made me feel good for a little bit, so it works. But after years of just convincing myself that it's no big deal, I'll get through this, I'm a high achiever, right? I'll figure this out. I figured out things out myself for years and I'm fine. This came to a point where it affected a relationship I was in. And it affected it so badly that I had to end that relationship and it hurt. And I said, oh my goodness, what is happening? I can't continue to live the way that I am. I can't have all these great things happening at work and then tell my friends nothing about work because I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of how life is. And so with this relationship being affected and having to come to this kind of hitting the wall of, you need to do something about this, buddy. And I decided I have to do something different. Not, I hope I will, maybe I will, this will leave. No, I have to do something different. So I reached out to my parents, who I had seen often, but they didn't know this about me, right? Because I was suffering in silence. So I reached out to them and I was honest. I shared my story and I just said, I need help. And thankfully they listened, they loved, and they didn't judge. And that was huge. Because I may have shut down if they had reacted some other way. And then because I was so determined to make the changes necessary, I got further help, right? I reached out to church leaders. I joined a group, a support group. And when I started to go to the support group, of course, I had those thoughts saying, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to go in a group of people and let them know what I'm doing? I know the judgments, right? I've judged myself for years. But as I went into that room and I saw the other people in the room and saw that they were not what I imagined, not the sleazeballs, not the perverts, not the whatever, but they looked almost just like me. Good people, successful people, probably leaders. All of a sudden, I realized for the first time that I was not the only one going through what I was going through. And I know sometimes that things will obviously, but we have to remember, in our own situation, we think we're the only ones feeling the way that we do. And so to go in this group and realize that I was not alone, for the first time in my life, I had this weight lifted off my shoulders. It's not just me, it's not just my problem, and I can get through this because I have a support team. And I learned all sorts of things about me, okay? Realizing that I was not the bad person that I thought I was because of this behavior. I realized that I had friends, I had support, I had people I could turn to and actually get help. And this turnaround was so impactful to me. I started to see life differently because I started to see myself differently. I started to understand why I turned to coping mechanisms instead of just thinking, well, it's because I'm a bad person, you know? And then once I had this turnaround and realized all these things and realized I don't have to feel this way, I learned different things about my thoughts. I learned about the power of connection. I learned about healing my emotions and how emotions turn or encourage us to turn to certain behaviors depending on the emotion we feel. I found this so impactful that I started to talk to my professional friends. And I was like, oh my goodness, have you ever felt this way? And they said, dude, we all feel this way. The problem is nobody talks about it. And I was like, okay. So both with my situation, my experience, and talking to other professionals, I said, if nobody's talking about it, I will. Because I know what it's like to suffer in silence, and I don't want others to have to do so. So yes, I left my HR executive position, where I had gotten my master's and certifications and all this experience. And I had to think, wow, am I leaving all this behind to do this? And I said, yeah, this is important enough to make that difference, because again, my experience is so powerful, and I don't want anybody else to suffer in silence. So what I do now is I'm an international speaker, a personal and professional coach. I plan events, I'm an author, a podcaster, all of these things to help share this message of not only do you not need to suffer in silence, but here's how you don't have to suffer in silence. And it's so different, because now I do live in confidence, where for years I started to doubt my confidence. And I'm telling you, that is no way to live. So to live in confidence and be able to do things that most people find uncomfortable, public speaking, right? For example. And now I do it because one, yes, I enjoy it, but two, because it's so important to me that I can do it. And I know my value. And I love helping others experience this for themselves, seeing their turnarounds, seeing the hope finally turn back on in their eyes. So here's something that I learned. We all have this proverbial bag that we carry around, all right? Now what we do with it is, on the outside of the bag, we write all the good things about us, all our accomplishments and how great we are, our degrees, and how life's so good and how we're picture perfect, right? Then on the inside, we have this little card that has our actual insecurities, our scared thoughts, our nervousness, our imperfections, and everything else. So all of us have this bag that we carry around. The inside has our vulnerabilities, the outside has our perfections, right? And here, oops. So here was my example, right? It's like, oh yeah, he's got a lot of great things going on. Good grief, picture perfect, awesome. And then we go around life carrying our bags and just saying, wow, she's great, he's awesome. Remembering my insecurities, but seeing your perfections, right? This is how we look at life. Would you agree? Yeah. And because we look at life that way, then we suffer in silence. Nobody can understand what I'm going through, because apparently they don't have any issues. And if somebody were to find out what's inside my bag, they would see how terrible it is. This is what we feel. But what I've learned is that we all have things inside our bags. And if we're all able to realize that and be okay with it, then we finally have connection. And we no longer judge each other. We no longer see differences. We now see, oh my goodness, I know Darren's story, and I still like it. Or now I know him even better, and now I have a stronger connection because I know his story. I don't have to think he's just a Queen Elizabeth of this meeting. You know?
I'm not in that one.
I know.
Recording.
So, knowing this,
Story.
so we have to know we all have something inside our bags, and if we can get comfortable being vulnerable with one another, because when you share your story, you give others permission to share theirs, and that's freedom. You no longer have to suffer in silence. So building that connection is huge. And that explains why I do what I do. It is so amazing to finally go to these groups, for example, share a story, and then hear their stories afterwards and say, oh my goodness, I've been living with this for years and nobody has understood. I haven't been able to tell anybody. And then feel the relief that they have when they open up, and then hear about how their life changes afterwards. And in fact, looking at this picture on the left, for example, my grandma, she reached out to me and she said, you smile different. You smile with your eyes now. And that meant the world to me. Because it's true. And when you look at pictures, my old pictures, I mean, the one that you saw, you think, no, there's nothing wrong with that. But that was in the midst of suffering and silence. Sometimes we don't see the difference. But when we do, it's huge. And so this is important to you and to whoever you're thinking about, that you hold the key to your mental and emotional well-being. You can make those differences. And in fact, nobody's going to make it for you. But when you learn the tools and skills to make it happen, you can have this change, just like I have. So I want to discuss 4 common mistakes we make with our mental health. And just think to yourself, which of these or all of these applies to me, right? And we think, well, it isn't this bad. It isn't that bad. It's just life, you know? It's just HR and apparent labor suffers like this. Or, hey, I'm a leader. This is part of the job. Whatever it is, where we say it isn't that bad. And then we're in the throes of our coping mechanisms, suffering more, hating ourselves more, until we finally come to our, it's a now or never kind of thing, right? We don't want to come to that point. We judge our emotions. How many of us have ever been upset that we're upset?
Oh, that's not.
Can't believe I'm upset again.
About this.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Why am I sad? This is ridiculous.
Right.
You know? So we judge our emotions. And here's a big one: we isolate. Because now I believe in God and the devil, and so the devil teaches you to isolate. And this is what all your thoughts lead towards. Nobody understands you. You can't tell anybody. You're a bad person for doing this, and therefore if they only knew, my goodness, boy, would that lose your job and everything else, right? So you learn to isolate because you have to protect everybody else from your pain, or nobody else would understand. But isolation is the opposite of connection. Okay, so remember that. And D, we finally turn to our coping mechanisms. And we think, well, this is better. This is the only time that I feel good. So by golly, I'm going to do it. But we remember that we hate how we feel even more after the coping mechanism because we truly deep down know that it's not working. So those are the common mistakes that we make. So this person that you're thinking of, does this apply to any of those? Okay. So the big thing is that we have to stop the cycle of frustration, stress, anxiety, burnout, all these things that we're feeling. It's not a one day I hope I feel different, or I'll just stay here because it's fine, right? It's no, you have to decide, now that I'm hearing these things and I'm resonating with how I feel, I need to do something about it. It's a now thing, right? Our mental health is that important. Give yourself permission to take care of you. I know as being a leader, we say, wow, my life is about others. You know, I'm busy. People come to my office, I'm going to help them. I don't have time for me. Are you kidding me? And when we say, well, I'm going to prioritize my mental health, what's the first thing to go out of the window when you get busy? Your own self-care, isn't it? So take care of your mental health with a system that is proven to work. You don't have to do it by yourself. You don't have to try to figure it out yourself. Do it with a way that's worked. Here's somebody that I was able to help. She was an HR director for many years, very capable, high achiever, driven person, had success, and yet her boss overlooked her. She felt undervalued. Because she was a woman, he wouldn't listen to her, you know, those kinds of things. And so she decided to create her own business to help other women HR professionals actually have their voice heard and to feel valued and make that difference. So after working together, she says, I was able to learn more about my emotions and how to determine if they were in tune with my actions, spend more time with my family, and still be the best employee and business owner I could be. So she learned about the 3 things we're talking about today: the connection, thoughts, and emotions. So for you, you can try to do it the hard way, like I did at first. I'll just figure it out myself. Can't tell anybody. One day it'll just be gone. It's just taking me a while, you know? Or you can stop doing what's not working, stop being in pain, start changing your life, and realize that today's the day. Because your mental health is that important. No more ignoring it, no more suffering in silence, actually doing something. And so, we realize that these three things, powerful things, are how we can improve our mental health. First is knowing the power of connection. Now, everybody in this room knows the power of connection. That's why we're part of the chamber, right? But realizing that you can be physically networking and yet suffering in silence. Okay? So with the power of connections, you find people you can turn to and trust and actually be honest with, be vulnerable with. Like my story. I finally shared what I was going through. And it might take time, that's fine. But again, as you share your story, it gives permission for others to share theirs. And then you build connection. It wasn't until I started to reach out to others that I realized I'm not alone in my pain. Other people are experiencing pain. Whoa. And we might relate in our pain. How crazy is that? And then it builds that connection, like I said. And then you start to feel better about yourself. You start to see hope. You start to build a support network, let's say. And all of a sudden, life is so much different. I had close family members, extended family members, friends, leaders, professionals, successful people who shared their stories with me. And I realized how much we had in common and how much we could help each other. And it's amazing as we have this power of connection, okay? Realizing that if you are isolating, if you're falling into any of these mistakes, then the trick is to do the opposite. The opposite of isolation is connection. So even if we don't know what to do, if we don't know how to do it, we say, how can I reach out? And I tell you, this is one of the biggest things that was my difference, is reaching out. If you can do that, your life starts to change. Don't go through it alone. Because we all need a lifeline at times, don't we? And the question is, are we going to wait until we're off the boat, nearly drowning? Or are we going to build those connections and experience that power of connection now? Mastering your thoughts. If you remember my story, for example, when you're feeling this way and when you have a lot of unknowns, then your thoughts go wild, don't they? The thing about the human brain is it's excellent at filling in gaps. Dave, right? Dave and I don't know each other. And so I could try to guess what he's thinking when he's looking at me. And my thoughts could say, wow, he's really enjoying it. He's smiling. Or, oh, crap, he's writing something down. I wonder what that's all about. You know? And so our thoughts can go wild or they can be empowering. And we have to learn how to master them. Are we going to believe the disempowering? Or are we going to encourage the empowering, right? And so, with my boss saying, wow, nothing against you, Ben, we just hate HR. Guess what kinds of thoughts I'm going to have after that? Now, every time he seems to avoid my office, what am I going to think? Doesn't want to talk to me. Every time I try to set up a meeting with him and it doesn't work out, what am I going to think? Anytime there's a meeting that I thought I was going to go to, but all of a sudden it happened and I wasn't there, what am I going to think, right? So tons of thoughts going on that lead to conclusions. I must not be good enough. There must be something wrong with me. Because I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. So you see how thoughts, uncontrolled, can lead to a false sense of identity. And when you have that false sense of identity, a disempowering identity, that's destructive. So we need to learn to master our thoughts. Challenge those that aren't untrue. And how do you do that? With connection, with some training, right? But when you learn to do that, then your old identity of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, this isn't working out because something wrong with me, turns into the better identity. Those thoughts, Dave's writing something down, I don't know what it's about, but it's okay. Okay? And maybe I can talk to him afterwards and build connection, right? And then I don't have to worry about those false thoughts, but I can have empowering thoughts. I may not know everything, I may not be perfect, but I'm growing. Hey, that's an empowering thought. I'm learning. Isn't it fun to make connections? When we can change our thoughts, changes our life. And finally, we can heal our emotions. We know that, all those emotions that I mentioned today that we resonate with, the sadness, the anxiety, the depression, the fear that we live with at times, no matter our circumstance. If we don't learn to heal those, then they will start to define us. Okay? So a lot of us say, well, this is fine. You know, how are you today? Oh. Here's the COVID wheel of emotions. Fine, thanks. How are you today? Fine, thanks. Really? How's your family? Fine,
Oh,
thanks.
good.
Don't ask me. Fine, thanks. You know? That's our easy way of answering. Because one, we don't want to be vulnerable. We're too busy. It's too painful. We're apathetic. And this is how life has become. Fine, thanks. Oh, I tried. Right? Nobody understands. Nobody cares. Because we haven't learned to heal our emotions. We realize that this is one example of the emotions wheel. There's, I don't know, 12 times 13, whatever that is, 140-ish emotions just on this wheel, ways that we can feel. But if we were to ask ourselves, how many emotions do we feel? Without practice, we might get up to a list of 6. Okay? Just because we're not used to talking that way, all right? But if we can get used to feeling by healing our emotions, changing our thoughts, experiencing the power of connection, then life is so much more enjoyable. We no longer have to numb ourselves and numb our emotions. In order to feel joy, you need to feel sadness. Yeah, that spectrum is healthy. It makes you human, makes you relatable. So, and here's the powerful thing for me. For years, because I was apathetic, I turned off. My family couldn't relate. My friends were very superficial relationships. And of course, there was no room for love. And I now tell people often, I didn't let love in until I let my emotions out. And it was after I went through this experience of healing, building connections, experiencing the power of connection, mastering my thoughts, healing my emotions, that I finally did find love. It was about 2 years ago that I got married. Yay. I married into having 3 kids. Talk about more love, right? And then we recently had our 4th. And so life is so much better because I prioritize my mental health. I no longer have to suffer in silence. I've learned about connection, mastered my thoughts, heal my emotions because I'm okay feeling, right? And that has made all the difference. And the same can happen for you. You no longer have to suffer in silence. But applying these things, you can live a life of love and connection. That's what I had. Thank you.
What's the name of the book again?
Book that I wrote, 7 steps. I can send it to you. It's 7 steps to reach your ultimate potential. It's just.
Is that the
If
same?
you'll send it, we send it to
Aspects of
Nicole
things.
and we'll send it out to the.
Oh,
group.
sure. Yep, I'll send it to everybody. I tried to end a little early in case there are questions.